morning, beautiful people. It's yet another beautiful and wonderful day in the city of Jos, and the program is the Dailies on Echo Television International. I'm your host, Sarah Elisha Dasham, and I have my co-host with me, Rachel Tanzi. Rachel, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
It seems the weather is a little bit, on you.
I don't like this weather, but then what can person do? We just have to manage.
Okay, well, really thank you so much. Let's run through the papers. We are live on Facebook and also on YouTube, so you can do well to reach out to us by dropping your comment on our Facebook page, and then later on the show we shall open the phone line so that you can actually be very active and actually contribute to the conversation here in the studio. I'll be starting with the first paper, which is the Nation newspaper. The first story here says, "Cut to Kogi, don't disrupt Dangote's operations." And then we also have on marketers raise petrol price to 179 from 169 naira. I know this is really very I think this is what we've been seeing throughout this week, the issue of the fuel scarcity. Not only is the fuel scarce, but present right now, even the price is really telling on people. In fact, if we're going to look at other outlets, you can imagine how the queue is going to be. And there are other outlets that are even selling the fuel higher than 179. There are some that 169, I guess. There's another that has even got to 200 naira. So you could tell. So imagine how much black marketers will be selling, because people will prefer to even get it simpler on the black market and just get to their business rather than waiting on the queue. That means you have to spend about a day, 2 or 3, or you have to wake up very early. There are people that even leave their cars there, just so that they'll be able to have the fuel. And we are actually approaching towards the festive season, which is expected that everything should be okay. Yesterday we saw where they promised us that in 48 hours this queue will be. But I really don't know how possible that is.
It's already 4 hours gone, so they have 24
hours left. So I just hope that truly something will be done about this queue, because it's really telling on people. Transport fare is really getting high and all of that. Still on the Nation newspaper, no admission offer has been cancelled, said JAM, which you can find on page 5. Online Lutu, casino and others to pay taxes directly to the First Inland Revenue Service. Other stories still on the Nation newspaper. We have court to federal government return Kanu to Kenya, pay him 500 million naira. Well, we hope to see what the federal government will do about that. The big story, PDP crisis, autumn attacks Atiku as Mimiko rejects job. Setback for PDP presidential candidate in Benue. Ex-Ondo governor vows not to ditch Wike. And outside of the paper, we have the issue on security alert. No reason for evacuation of the U.S. citizens. Well, if you say there is no reason, I do not know how really this is going to be, because if there is actually an alarm that there is threat, and we've also heard people saying that just recently explosive have been discovered somewhere in Lupe in Abuja with 2 pistols. So we're still waiting to bring detail of that story. So I think this is really a cause for alarm, that citizens have to be very careful. We should need to really avoid crowded places, market and everything. And if you're having any occasion, try as much as possible not to let people stay there for quite a long period of time. Try as much as possible to round it up, because the days are really evil. So we cannot be ignorant of the devices of the enemy at this point in time.
And if the U.S. embassy feels that what they need to do is evacuate their people, then allow them to. Just allow them for the time being to do what they feel is necessary for their own safety. Because in the papers yesterday, one of the news was that is targeting foreign nationals here in Nigeria. So if that alert is a threat to them, then allow them to do what they can do for their own safety. Don't tell them there's no need for a security alert that you were already disregarding. So just let them do what is best for them. And
if we don't want them to evacuate, I think we know the right thing to do at this time. So we need to beef up security and do all that is needed. Let's take a look at the angle toward business, which is the CBN changes Naira notes. The right of Linda, the Naira notes that will be changed is 1,500 Naira, 200 Naira to wear. New look, and Apex Bank plans 3.2 trillion Naira cash cash mop up in 100 days, which you can find on page 6. Well, I do not know why we have to change the looks of our naira at the point where we're still looking at inflation and then its effects on people, and then the CBN is looking towards actually changing the banknotes. Well, I don't know what effects or why we want to change the naira route at this point in time, because we know that lots of money will actually be channeled towards doing that.
It will.
So I think we have to, just like we have said, we need to set our priorities right in this country. There are things that are important, but I think that are much more important at this point in time, which I feel that is what our attention should be focused on rather than this. But if already they have taken the steps, so we keep our fingers crossed, and regardless of the new looks of what the...
And at this point, I think we'll just trust the CBN, hoping that they know what they're doing. Perhaps they've seen that this could help, maybe, in tackling the issues of inflation, or it could add value to our currency. We don't know. But I believe this is new, coming as a news. So as time goes on, we will have more details from them telling us what is the importance of this, because at a time like this, it looks like the least of our problem. That's the truth. As you said, with the many things going on, it looks like the least of our problem. But then let's try and trust the CBN for now, that they know what they're doing. And as time goes on, they will tell us exactly what is the reason behind it and what it will do to our naira. Because the bottom line is, we need our naira to have value. We need it to appreciate. And if they feel that this could help with that, then it's a good thing. But then if it's for some reason that is not necessary at a time like this, then we really need to set our priorities right.
Of course, immediately they introduced what I remember clearly when back then when the 100 naira was introduced, before the 200 naira, our naira really had value because we still use our coins and all of that.
Exactly.
But I think the more we begin to introduce the higher notes, 500, 1,000, and that was when we got into deep trouble. So I just hope, just like you said, the CBN know what they're doing at this point in time. Downside of the paper, we have court dismisses suit seeking Abiodun's disqualification, and shippers lose 80 billion naira, which you can find on page 27 and page 7 of the Nation newspaper. And that's all on the Nation newspaper.
On the Blueprint newspaper, registered voters found 93.5 million for 2023 election. This is coming from INEC. And the rider says to sanction 23 registration officers for unethical conduct, vows to track, persecute parties, candidates violating campaign laws. And the big story, as CBN plans new Naira road, notes EFCC hails Apex Bank's move to tackle inflationary trends. And the rider says pledges to clamp down on currency hoarders, higher rates of counterfeit 500 naira, 1,000 naira reason for new notes. This is coming from Emefiele. And then redesigning our currency, good for nation's economy. This is coming from Owaleke and Ida Kolo. And then policy will be counterproductive. Nigeria at risk of deeper debt crisis, KPMG warns. And we've activated mechanism to tackle the problem. This is coming from the federal government. And if you want to read all of this, you can find that on page 6 of the Blueprint newspaper. And on the left side of the paper, Nigeria safe won't be stampeded by US, UK government's travel advisory. This is coming from our federal government. Then the Muslim ticket, parties will live with consequences of their choices. This is coming from Coca. Still on the Blueprint newspaper, FFS, La Sambos, Lesema, and other safe WAEC officials from Inferno. This is in Lagos, and you can read that on page 8. And on the downside of the paper, Atiku will destroy Nigeria, not Tinubu, FFK to Obaseki. And then 21st National Sports Festival, Buhari flags of Touch of Unity, and you can read that on page 31. Court awards IPOB leader Kanu 500 million naira over arrest and detention. Buhari hails election of Nigeria's Owodoni in Canadian City. Dangote refinery would transform downstream sector. This is coming from Ghana Petroleum, and you can read that on page 22. And that's all the news on the Blueprint newspaper.
Let's take a look at this day newspaper. Federal government is tackling growing inflationary pressure, says the finance minister. Says crude oil theft subsidy deduction responsible for poor 2022 budget performance. Lament effects of the rising diesel costs on food prices. Highlight measures to make the port attractive. Well, you can read that on page 49. And Obaja now called halt move to shut down Dangote cement by Kogi government. You can still find that inside the paper. Atiku takes presidential campaign to the United States. Other stories here from the federal government. Nigerians won't be stampeded by the US and the UK travel as Viceroy says despite terrorist attack, Nigeria still safe. US authorized departure to citizens, encourages personnel exit plan. The big story here, in ambush of vote buyers, ransom takers, CBN vote Naira notes by the end of January. So possibly these are some of the reasons why they are actually redesigning it. The right of doing that, redesign 200 Naira, 500 Naira, 1000 Naira note. Says 80% currency in circulation outside bank vaults. And the CBN governor, Emefiele, says new bills out by December 15. Existing banknotes to expire January 31st. Hall changes for cash deposit to encourage transaction. And EFCC hails and stand ready in banking hall for money launderers. Analysts urge financial intelligence unit to monitor illegitimate transactions. And we can see the CBN governor during the meeting for redesigning the Naira. So for those who are interested, grab this day newspaper and any newspaper stand close to you and read detail of any of the stories that's of interest to you.
On the Punch newspaper, still on flooding, experts warn of epidemic as corpses flood. And then DSS arrests terror suspect. US evacuates non-emergency staff. CBN plans Naira redesign to counter counterfeiting kidnapping. And you can read that on page 9. EFCC rearranges suspended AGF over 109 billion Naira fraud. And you can read that story on page 16. And the big story on the Punch newspaper, Lagos, Kaduna, Rivers, Kano voters top INEC register. And the rider says 2.7 million illegal registrants deleted, 23 registration officers under sanction. INEC to display register for November 12th to November 25th, 6 cooperation. Buhari eyes over $1.3 billion trade with South Korea. And there's a picture story there with our president and the president of South Korea. And on the downside of the paper, NDLEA freezes 20 billion Naira in socialist 103 bank accounts. And you can read that on page 18. Tears as BRT vehicle kills trader, apprentice, and laborers. What a sad story. And you can read more of that on pages 4 and 5. Federal government announces preferred bidders for Abuja-Lagos Airport. And that story can be found on page 20. And that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
Let's take a look at the world of business, a leader from the Business Day newspaper, where we have the big story here. Federal government revenue shortfall heads for 12-year high. Other story here we have why CBN Naira note redesign means for the economy. So you can read the why it means that so much to Nigeria on page 28 of the Business Day newspaper. Landway expand, Isimi Lagos launches Future City Week. And we're having APC housing plan face funding hurdle, which you can read on page 30. We still have Tinubu spending plan seeing stalking inflation, and Tinubu action plan target compulsory health insurance, which you can find on page 31 of the Business Day newspaper. And that's all on the Business Day.
On the Daily Independent, court orders federal government to return Kanu to Kenya and fines it 500 million naira. And the writer says Kanu shams 100 billion naira suit against federal government for disobeying court order. APC to decide Tinubu's participation in presidential debate, says interviews not necessity as Tinubu already speaking to Nigerians. And the big story, 93 million voters to decide Obi, Atiku, Tinubu and others' fate. And the writer says INEC says no going back on BVA's e-transmission of results. 23 INEC staffs face disciplinary action for fake registration. Still on the Daily Independent, federal government announces preferred bidders for 3 airports, assures no job loss for workers. I hope so, and you can read more of that on page 29. Niger Delta Presidential Amnesty Program may end November, and you can read that on page 6. Federal government okays purchase of 660 billion naira innocent vehicles for FRSC. Approved 16.7 billion naira for internet broadband expansion. Benue will vote against Atiku if he fails to apologize. This is coming from Otom. We won't be stampeded by U.S. travel advisory. This is coming from the federal government. CBN circulates new redesigned Naira notes from December 15. Analysts see move as way to curb monetization of political processes. And the last story on the Daily Independent, we expect to get salary arrears for period strike lasted. This is coming from NASU, and you can find that story on page 7. And we can move to the next paper.
No, Rachel, before we move further, this story that Niger Delta Presidential Amnesty Program may end November. Do you know the reason why the federal government is hoping to end that amnesty? We know how far this amnesty program has actually done. It has reduced the issue of all those militants that we were having around there. Yes. And I think these are also part of the reason why we're having oil bulkery at that area. So at a point where we are still fighting the issue of oil theft, and then we are planning that possibly it's in May, so that means maybe yes, maybe not. No. That can actually, that they're going to stop this amnesty program. If they're stopping, what then do these people stand to gain? Because most of the oil that the country's benefit is coming from that region. We know the danger, or we actually know the harbor and pollution the oil has caused to their land. Oil have cost to their water, and lots of things over there. They can't fish, they can't farm, they depend on other parts of the country to actually import in food. So what do the youths of that country, of that state stand to gain? There was a back and forth last year about how much allocation will be given to them, percentage that will be given to them. They wanted 30, and the federal government said they were going to give them just 5% out of the 100% oil you get from that land. Definitely it's going to look as if you are not respecting them. This is the land that is giving the country the revenue they depend on. So why don't they get so much from it? So this story actually, draws so much my mind. Yes. We know that some of them, the scholarship that is being promised to them, lately it doesn't come as it should. So, and all of that. So I hope that the federal government will deeply sit down, especially the presidency, and look into this. Is it the presidency or is it the president that is making this comment? We need to really know who is making this comment, and then we need to know that what other means do they have for the people of the Niger Delta at a point like that.
And I was wondering, what next do you have for them? You can't just scrap something off and leave these people like that. We know the advantage of this thing. We can't tell the federal government. They already know the advantage of this thing. So what is your idea of stopping this thing? I feel they deserve to have this program permanently. The fact that they're only getting 5%, to be honest, is small. But let's understand that that's what Nigeria depends on. So it's fine. Let's say, okay, yeah, everybody's depending on it. So for some reason, even at that, it's still not good enough. But then this, I feel, is one of those things that they should benefit from it continuously, as long as they keep having that oil. And even if for some reason that oil is no longer there, of course it will be there, I'm just saying. But this pollution and damage will not just disappear overnight. It's going to linger for a long while until that area is cleared up over years. So no, I feel amnesty should continue for these people as long as this oil is in their place. They need it, like they need those scholarship. It will take them out of crime. Imagine if you are at a place where you know that you could be wealthy by being illegal and you can't, and yet the government is not coming to your help. I feel this is at a disadvantage to us as a country scrapping this program up. So the government should really rethink this, because I don't think it's not the right step to take.
Of course, of course. Well, let's take a look at other papers. But before then, I think let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, it's still the Dailies on Network Television International. I'm Stella Elisha, and Rachel is here with me, Rachel Tanze. Thank you so much, Rachel, for doing this with me. Yes, we'd like to go through other papers, but we'll open the phone lines for you so you can actually call us. I'm very sure you have a lot to contribute to what we've been saying in the studio. The fact that the federal government are looking at possibility of maybe, scraping off the amnesty program for the Niger Delta, and other stories, the changing of the same notes, a lot of things actually happening. So we really love to hear from you. What do you feel is the way forward? Do you think changing the Naira note from 200 Naira up to 1,000 Naira is the way forward? Possibly because we want to actually curtail the issue of money laundering and also vote buying. Do you think is the way forward? Well, we'd love to hear from you. You can call us, or you can actually drop your comment on our Facebook page. Let's move to other papers, and I'll be taking the first newspaper at this moment. Online betting. FRS begin tax deduction at transaction point. Gives operation December 31st as deadline. How Adamu withdraw 3 billion Naira from APC secret account illegal. SAC director. So for those who are interested in the issue of the APC, you can grab the first news and read details of that. Return Nnamdi Kanu to Kenya, pay him 500 million Naira, court orders the federal government. Wike swears in ex-APC spokesperson, 17 others as new commissioners. And on the issue of flood, Bayelsa situation pathetic, says Governor Emmanuel donate 100 million Naira to the victim. A lot of people are actually depositing and also, giving money. I hope the money actually gets to the victim. Coming from the spokesperson, dismisses mega rumor. Corda John suit seeking Ekweremadu's sack. Still on 2023, Wike article few will cost PDP presidency. This is coming from Adiyaju. Well, I hope that they actually put aside their personal interests or whatever grievances they are having, and let us face the the election 2023. The big story on the first news: terror alert. U.S. moved to evacuate embassy staff and citizens from Abuja. Okay, we have a caller from Abuja. Hello, Stephen. Good morning. Hello, Mr. Stephen. Can you hear me? Please go on. Okay, I think I have to end that call. Please call us back again if you can. Still on the first news, terror alert. U.S. moved to evacuate embassy staff and citizens from Abuja. The writer said, once we have limited ability to provide emergency services to U.S. citizens in Nigeria, no cause for alarm. We won't be stampeded by the US-UK terror alert. Federal government react. Says security agency on top of the matter. Nigeria safe. Alert evacuation aim at embrace. And okay, we have another caller from Cameroon. Hello, good morning, Michael. Mr. Michael, can you hear me? Please go on. Okay. All right, let me just go on with the paper. If you can call us again, we really love it, Mr. Michael. And we have the alert evacuation aim at embarrassing security agency. This is coming from the military sources. Don't trivialize terror alert. SDP, YPP wants the federal government. And okay. Hello, Mr. Michael. Mr. Mike, I can barely hear you here. Please, can you speak up? Thank you, Mr. Michael, for really, contributing. And, still looking at the issue of the terror, alert. And I think actually stand with the SDP and the YPP in this, when they're warning the federal government. We should not just push away things like this. Just like I said, there is always no smoke without a fire. When we hear a lot of that form coming, that doesn't mean we should be relaxed and we say no cause for alarm. Of course, there's a cause for an alarm. Because just like I said, we do not know what these people are cooking, whether it smells nice or it tastes nice. We do not know. But one thing is for sure is that they never mean well for the nation. With the fact that we're looking at how we can make our economy to be stable again, the issue of flood left, right, and center. We have lots of bad roads that not only as armed robbers to the Kuje prison acts. The same thing, no cause for alarm. And we saw what happened. They are still on the loose. We do not even know where they are. Possibly even the hardcore the loose. So I just hope that we don't just sit back and say no cause for alarm, but we really need to do something. Still on the first news, we have, I have forgiven Ozibanjo, says Tinubu. CBN to release redesigned Naira note December 15 as Northern Group kicks Tinubu, Obi, other candidates' fate coming from INEC. Says election result will be transmitted electronically. And the last story here, which is still on 2023, we cannot work for Atiku in Benue, coming from Autumn. Says we can't lie. He says cross on that. That's all on the first newspaper.
On the Nigerian Tribune, we will track party campaigns. This is coming from INEC. Says 93 million voters tentative. Court orders federal government to return Kanu to Kenya and awards 500 million naira damages. Still on flood, 30 years of consistent investment needed to control menace. Says it is state local government duty to provide temporary shelter for victims. Lagos to demolish building on drainage setbacks. And still on the terror alert, U.S. OKs non-emergency staff to leave Nigeria. federal government talks tough. And the writer says, we won't be stampeded by travel advisory. This is coming from Lai Mohammed. Says, despite terrorist threat, country still safe. And you can read that on page 2. And the big story on Nigerian Tribune, CBN cites hoarding, counterfeiting as reasons for redesigning Naira. And the writer says, rolls out new 200 Naira, 500 Naira, 1,000 Naira notes December 15. Begins mop-up of 2.7 trillion Naira to tackle inflation. Suspends charges on cash deposit. EFCC to monitor process of withdrawal of old currency notes, and you can read that on page 6. Court retains Kogi government for shutting down Dangote Cement. Alleged 109 billion Naira flood, federal government rearrange suspended Accountant General Ahmed Idris and others, and you can read that on page 25. No cause for alarm, WAEC management says at Fire Guts headquarters, and you can read that report on page 28. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
All right, let's take a look at the New Telegraph newspaper and the first story, which is on fuel scarcity. Vessels refuse to discharge product over cash crisis. World Bank bemoan currency depreciation in Nigeria and others. You can find that on page 26. And I hope with the change in our currency, that will actually affect and actually, just like you said, give value to our Naira. Because if presently we are appreciating our Naira gradually. INEC is saying 93.5 million voters to elect Nigeria's next president. And you can read that on page 2 and 8. Former PDP spokesman Udise Mantu resigned from the party, says he retired from partisan politics. In 2023, more trouble for PDP as Mimiko rejects nomination as leader of campaign. Over 10,000 Cameroonians refugee in Benue. This is coming from Governor Otom. And then he is lamenting the rising influx of IDPs and displaced flood victims, which you can find on page 2. And I hope that the government does something about this, because we know those riverine areas are really being affected by the flood. You know that definitely, that's why Kogi are the receiving end, both River Benue and River Niger.
Yes.
You know, they meet at a point. So definitely this will actually affect. And we can see that we're having over 10,000 Cameroonian refugees. That means we're having more. Possibly, even if you check some of the IDP camps, they might be let's say, jam-packed at a point in time. So we have to do something about making sure that these displaced victims that have been affected by the flood, something will be done so that they can go back to their homes. Still on New Telegraph newspaper, existing currency ceased to be legal tender January 23rd. As CBN get approval to redesign Naira, Apex Bank set December 15 for circulation of, and we have 200 Naira, 500 Naira, and 1,000 Naira to wear new look. So we have to look forward to the new look from December 15th. And on insecurity, we won't be stampeded by the US-UK adversaries coming from the federal government, as FEC OK 17.4 billion naira for communication, 4 billion naira for roads in Kwara and Niger State. I hope this money will really be used for that. And then we have to hold them accountable also. Nigeria grossly on the police with less than 500,000 personnel. This is coming from the PCRC. Won't meet up even with the 50,000 yearly recruitment. Something needs to be done about the police. We're supposed to have more of them, especially with the forthcoming elections coming in, the crimes that are happening around. So they said even with the 50,000 yearly recruitment, they are still on the staff. So I think this is where the federal government needs to sit down and think, what can we do more to have more of this policemen be recruited, and actually good policemen, because we really need their help. There are various sectors that need to be, controlled by them. Abiodun paid 3 billion naira for gratuity, not 70 billion naira. This is coming from pensioners. So we hope that whoever was being given that 70 billion naira will actually, bring out that money, because the pensioners are saying just 3 billion naira that they have received. And on the issue of strike, 3 academic sections running concurrently coming from JAM put varsity on notice against jumping academic session, insists admission for 2020 to 2023 not elapse, which you can find on page 4. And still on the issue of court order from the federal government, return Nnamdi Kanu to Kenya, award him 5 billion naira damages. IPOP leader files fresh 100 billion naira suit against the federal government over continued detention. Monarch clergy disagree with government over Kanu's release, which you can find on page 4 and also 29. Downside of the paper, we have a study that says scientists develop drug that block genes central to cancer growth. So if you want to know more about what the scientists have discovered, you can check that on page 26. And that's all on the New Telegraph.
On the Matrix newspaper, WK2. Mimiko rejects inclusions in Atiku's presidential campaign council. It is over, Tinubu says he doesn't have anything against Osibajo. Barca Atletico Madrid crash out of Champions League, Liverpool win. This is still on the terror attack. We won't be stampeded, federal government tells U.S. government. And the big story on the Matrix newspaper, Knox kudos greets CBN's plan to introduce new Naira road. And it is another wasteful venture and a looting jamboree. Ambush vote buyers and ransom takers. Slush funds will be pushed out. EFCC hails stand ready in banking hall for money laundering. Financial Intelligence Unit should monitor illegitimate transaction. This is coming from analysts. And halts charges for cash deposit to encourage transaction. And if you want to read more of that story, get the Matrix newspaper for yourself. INEC yet to print voters card of 2022 registrants. Again, in Nnamdi Kanu floors federal government as court orders him to be returned to Kenya and awarded for 500 million naira in damages. Atiku donates 50 million naira to flood victims in Bayelsa, vows to prevent future occurrences if elected as president. RMAFC moves to review salaries of political office holders, judicial workers, and others. And there's a picture story giving support to our troops. General Overseer on Hadin K, General C.G. Musa during visit and prayer for frontline troops in Maiduguri, Borno State yesterday. And the last news, Oli Sametu explains why he dumped PDP. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
On the Voice of Liberty, 2022 APC convention. I have nothing against Osibanjo. Tinubu says it is over. And still on terror attack allowed U.S. government begins relocation of its citizen staff from Abuja over potential terrorist attack. President, VP, Senate President, Speaker, CGN, governors and others to enjoy pay hike coming from the Revenue Commission. I hope to see the names of civil servants also being reflected in this hike of pay, because it's not just about the people up, but then you also need to make the life of those that are under you better, and that will make your governance or your rulership better as it goes. So we hope that the Revenue Commission will also look into not just increasing the salaries of public officers, but also look at the lives of the civil servants. So I hope we do.
And to be honest, they need it the most. It's not being selfish or anything, but then they need it the most because we know that there are those that have not put in place this 30,000 minimum wage. This is where they need to come in and make sure that it is like people are adhering to this bill that have been passed concerning minimum wages. So to be honest, I'm not saying those at the top don't need it, but people down, like the commoners, are the ones who are really in need of this, for the Revenue Commission to like step in and make sure that they are getting what the government have said they should get.
Of course, of course. Well, the big story for the Voice of Liberty have that CBN rules out plan to redesign 200 naira, 500 naira, and 1,000 naira currency note. The Central Bank of Nigeria said it will redesign the currency respectively. Kidnappers demand 550 million naira for adopted passengers on Nasarawa Benue border. This really is sad one. I hope that the federal government, state government will quickly rush to the aid of these passengers that have been adopted by kidnappers. Ethiopian Airlines strike in Nigerian air, an existing threat to the aviation sector coming from the aviation stakeholders. So you can get the Voice of Liberty and read detail of that. And on the issue of national security, Ohanizi opposed Danjuma's self-defense call. Downside it, we have 2023, 93 million voters to decide Atiku, Tinubu, Obi, and others' fate coming from INEC. And I hope with this number, these are the numbers of those that actually have been registered. So do well to grab your PVC. Please go make the right decision by voting in the right government to actually take over the rulership of Nigeria, because we need this country to be better. And that's all on the Voice of Liberty.
On The Guardian, federal government dismisses threat as U.S. evacuate workers' families from the Federal Capital Center. And you can read that on page 6. Workers of dysfunction New Nigerian newspaper appeal to Lalong to pay entitlement. And you can read that on page 9. And the big story, worries for Naira as CBN redesigned currency. Mops 2.73 trillion Naira black money. And the writer says hopeful step may rein in inflation, ransom payment, and boost Naira value. Announcement interpreted as beginning black money mop up. Decision can trigger asset bubble, says Oshobo. Yusuf, exercise has no monetary policy significance. Naira reacts immediately, falls to 765 Naira per dollar at Lagos parallel market. Experts worry about timeline, urge NFIU to monitor huge deposits. Northern Group wants Emefiele sacked, threatens protests across region. EFCC backs move, warns against sabotage. And downside of the paper, university admission session still valid, says JAM. Exoneration of Saro Wiwa, others will end agony conflict. Mossop insists, and you can find that story on page 8. World Bank warns global inflation may worsen as currencies depreciate. Experts prescribe ways to avert recession and growth.
Let's take a look at the Business Standard newspaper, and we have $2 billion to be sought from the Central Bank of Fuel Import. Government move to ease industrial energy crisis, and you can take a look at it. We have the request to replace before Bangladesh Bank. We have government looking at some of the sectors, consumption, and also the ongoing gas crisis. That of 2021 and presently 2022. So you can get more of that inside the paper. Recovering London money, hates Islam anti-graft watchdog for sleeping on it. IMF for declaring defaulters in 90-day past due. The central bank prepares reply as a visiting IMF team may meet with Bangladesh Bank officials Thursday, which is today. Once again, two-day transport strike called ahead of the BNP Barist rally, and the FBCCI to seek 2 more years for industries to replace stimulus loan, and the BTMA writes to the EM to facilitate the extension and meet the gas and electricity crisis. And we consider that is not just in Nigeria, but it's peculiar to other countries also. So we hope that we put our hands together and see what we can do, and also learn from other developing countries how they were able to overcome all of these. And that's all on the Business Standard newspaper.
On the Sporting Life, Eric Ten Hag, Warren won't play for Man United. Haaland had a fever before the game. This is coming from Guardiola. And then Arteta to get £50 million war chest. Ronaldo returned to squad affirms. And then secret document exposed Juventus promised to pay Ronaldo £17 million during the pandemic. Cotai blasts Real Madrid teammates. FA confirms no action against Henderson or Gabriel. Barcelona delay plan to sign Wolves Neves, and you can read that on page 2 of the Sporting Life. Red zoom into round of 16. That's Liverpool. Barca knocked out of the Champions League group stage, and then they will be down to the Europa. Serie A giant is into last 16. That is Inter Milan. And then Osimhen rested for Liverpool as both teams pick UCL round of 16 spot. And then Flamingos falter on penalty against Colombia. And then Chelsea agreed to deal in principle to sign £52 million in Cuckoo. Bayern considering move for Gundogan. And then Ndidi back in Leicester training. And that's all the news on Sporting Life.
All right, let's take a look at the Times Malta paper. We have huge drop in people who exercise and eat healthy, and I think it's very important that we all do into that to avoid diabetes. It's actually killing lots of people. So it's very, very important that we increase our eating habits by eating healthy and also exercising also. And we have the MTA when £19 million over its budget in 2021, which you can find on page 2. We have some picture story here where we can see a young unveiled woman stand on top of a vehicle as thousands make their way towards the city of Amana, hometown in Kurshti province, Iraq, to make 40 days since her death. Well, we can see that for those who are interested in that international story, you can read that story on page 11 of the Times Malta, and that's all on the Times Malta.
On the Daily Express, fear over search of 10,000 Albanian men who illegally crossed the channel. Nigella wants you to love her 1.25 cents peanut butter pasta, and you can read that on page 9. Refuse triple lock.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for doing this with me. Thank you to our viewers for keeping the date with us on the Dailies. This is how far we can go on the program, the Dailies. Do well to drop your comments, your contributions, and also always pray and support Echo Television International. Until we come your way again, have a blessed day.